I have two secret weapons to share with you. Hello and welcome. Welcome to Input English. Today I'd like to share two interesting ideas which are really secret weapons for the language learner. They're also useful in life. They come from a professor of mine decades ago. As we talked about things, he shared his ideas, and I remembered them ever since. What I'm going to share with you today is Allen's axiom and Allen's rule. So who is Allen? Well, I don't disclose identities of private individuals on the internet, no. So I will say that he was a professor. He was an educator. He helped a lot of people over decades. Allen's axiom states that people do basically what they want to do. The first time I heard that, it sounded so obvious, almost trite. But over the years, I started to realize that that is super useful. So let's begin. What is an axiom? Well, an axiom is a statement that is accepted as true, and it allows us to understand things better. There are many axia the world over. One, for instance, is the only constant is change. That's an axiom. It's a statement that people widely accept as true, but if you understand the axiom, it's useful to understand other things about the world. In our case, people do basically what they want to do is helpful to understand people. It's helpful to understand our own behavior, and it's helpful to understand the behavior of others who we encounter. It has major implications in language learning. If we accept that people do basically what they want to do, then if we give you tasks to learn English, which are boring and unpleasant, you will not do them. If, on the other hand, you can find activities that are useful for learning English, that are fun and interesting and compelling, then you will be unstoppable. You will learn the language for sure. So understanding Allen's axiom has major implications for you, the language learner. It certainly was true of me. When I was studying various languages in workbooks, studying vocabulary, studying grammar, listening to boring dialogues that were repetitious, requiring me to say things that I didn't understand, that was so terrible, so boring, that I stopped doing it. When I found comprehensible input and I was able to find stories and dialogues that were very interesting, then I naturally gravitated toward that. I wanted that. And when I wanted it, it made it easier to get it. So Allen's axiom is super useful to you. There's a lot of depth in what he said. In the 21st century, in the workplace or in society, a lot of times there are people telling us what we have to do. In the workplace, for instance, there might be a manager who says, do this, and you have to do this, and you have to do this. They're bossing you around. And if you don't want to do those things, it's difficult. It's hard to do things you don't want to do. So this is a major problem in a management system if you're bossing people around and they don't want to do what you've told them to do. Now, the opposite is leadership. So leadership is when you are influential upon other people and your influence helps them to want to do something that you want them to do. So the difference, if a manager says, I want you to do all this by 5 o'clock, and it's super boring and tedious and you don't want to do it, maybe it gets done, maybe it doesn't. But if instead the person shows leadership and they say to you, you know, we need to get all this stuff done. Why don't you follow me and I'll help you get it started and we'll just do this together. Follow me, I think, leadership. So for a person in an organization working with people, trying to get them to do things that are useful for the organization, they might be well served to understand Allen's axiom. People will basically do what they want to do, and it is the job of the leader to convince people and influence people to where they want to do what needs to be done. For the language learner, it's easy. Find the methods for learning the language that captivate your imagination, which you find interesting and fun, and then you'll be unstoppable. So that's Allen's axiom. The second thing I'd like to share with you today is Allen's rule. A rule? Well, this is not a bad rule. This is a good rule. An axiom helps us understand things that we observe. A rule helps us with our behavior as we deal with things. If you look at human endeavor over centuries, there have been a lot of rules, and societies around the world have a lot of rules. Most of these we call laws. We have speed limits. We have the 10 Commandments. If you are familiar with Judeo-Christian traditions, the 10 Commandments are rules. They were laws. All societies have rules against killing human beings or stealing property. These are rules. Okay, so what is Allen's rule? Allen's rule is not so difficult. What he stated is, you have to stay curious. You have to stay curious. When you see something that doesn't quite make sense or something that seems a little out of the ordinary, you need to ask why. You need to always be asking yourself why. This is super useful in life. As a young child, I did not like problems. Problems caused frustration, caused fear. I didn't like problems. But as a researcher, as a scientist, I loved problems because problems in a scientific setting are opportunities to learn. So if you encounter a problem, instead of getting upset or irritated by that problem, no, make a note of it. That's a problem, okay. And then apply Allen's rule. You have to stay curious. So if you have a problem that has baffled other people and you're curious, you may be able to find a solution to that problem. In language learning, that has very much been the case. My personal experience was kind of typical. I was taught by didactic methods in a classroom, grammar, vocabulary, not much input, and I'd learned very little German. This was a problem. This was frustrating. And the problem was amplified when I got to Europe and I couldn't buy groceries. By staying curious, I was able to find methods for learning German while I was there, listening to people talk, asking questions, using known objects or concepts as keys for understanding what a person was saying. Now, for decades, I have followed Allen's rule. Every day, when I see something, I ask, why? How come? I want to understand better how things work. So Allen's rule is really a celebration of human curiosity. Curiosity is one of our best traits, and it is how we make progress. I encourage everyone to think about these two simple statements. People basically do what they want to do, and you have to stay curious. Those two simple statements are super useful to those of us who want to learn a language. That's the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm hoping that this will provoke some thought, some interest. I would love to hear your comments. If you could drop some comments, they would be appreciated. I invite you to come join us in future videos. See you soon.